Hey guys, so this is the second video. It's going to be a different book. I wanted to share with you something. So, I got this Harry Potter Lego, I think at Christmas. It might have been Mother's Day, but I got it for Christmas, and I am going to spend some time today trying to build this, and I will show you guys how well I do. I don't know. I haven't built Lego for quite a while, so I don't know how long it'll take me. So I'll just show you what I have done, maybe in tomorrow's video, and keep you up to date with what I'm doing when I'm not making videos for you. So I hope you guys are all doing well, that your families are good, and that you are having some good times at home with making sure you're keeping up with reading if you can and any kind of schoolwork. Today, what I wanted to read was what was the Titanic? We were reading about Titanic in school, and I just feel like if we read this, then I could read this to you first, and then I have the I Survived. I have an I Survived Titanic, so I thought maybe that'd be fun to read them in that kind of an order. So I'm going to start with this one, and there's pictures. So when there's a picture, I'll make sure to turn it and show the camera. Please, bear with me, be patient, because I don't really know what I'm doing with YouTube, but I'm doing my best. Okay, Khaleesi's here. She's sleeping. She might perk up later, but it's pretty much nap time for her. She gets up too early. Okay, here we go. What was the Titanic? By Stephanie Sable. Oh, it has a table of contents, non-fiction text features, but also found in fiction. So that's pretty cool. So it looks like the first chapter is going to be, what was the Titanic? What was the Titanic? April 14th, 1912. The grandest luxury ship ever, the Titanic, was crossing the Atlantic Ocean. It was on its maiden or first voyage. The ship had left England 4 days earlier. It was making great time. In just a few days, the Titanic was scheduled to arrive in New York City. Aboard ship, the evening of April 14th seemed just like any other. First-class passengers enjoyed a feast with 10 courses, including oysters and filet mignon. The Titanic's captain, Edward John Smith, joined a dinner party in first class. It was hosted by a wealthy couple from Philadelphia. After dinner, some first-class passengers played cards or listened to the orchestra. Here's a picture. Okay. In second class, a minister sang hymns with about 100 people. Down in third class, passengers danced together in their lounge known as the General Room. But after a long day at sea, many aboard the Titanic were already in bed. Captain Smith checked in with his officers at the bridge around 9 p.m. The bridge was the command center of the ship. Smith told his officers to let him know if any problem arose, then he went to his cabin. Outside, the night was very cold. There was no moon, but the sky was clear. Thousands of stars shone brightly. The sea was so calm it looked like a mirror. No waves rippled in the distance. Up in the crow's nest, 2 lookouts kept watch, ready to spot danger. In this part of the Atlantic, ice was a concern. Ships had to be very careful to avoid hitting an iceberg. The 2 lookouts chatted and tried to keep warm. Then suddenly, at 11:40 p.m., almost out of nowhere, a large black shape came into view. Could it be? Yes, it was an iceberg. The iceberg was almost directly ahead of the ship. It looked like the ship might run straight into it. The lookouts rang the warning bell 3 times, the signal for an emergency. They telephoned the bridge where the officers were stationed. "Iceberg right ahead," they shouted. The officers only had 37 seconds to respond. First Officer William Murdoch contacted the engine room and ordered the ship's engines stopped and put into reverse. Would the Titanic avoid the iceberg, or was it too late? And look, we have an illustration that has all sorts of labels. Nonfiction text features. Chapter 1, The Age of Steam. Until the mid-1700s, ships had sailed and relied on the power of the wind to move. Because winds are unpredictable, it wasn't possible to know exactly how long a ship would take. A ship might cross the Atlantic Ocean in either a few weeks or a few months. By the early 1800s, steam engines began to power ships instead of sails. These steamships could cross the Atlantic in only 2 to 4 weeks. Eventually, more powerful engines were built. A steamship with a powerful engine could cross the ocean in just 10 to 14 days. It shows the early ship, and then it shows the steamship. Steamship grew in size over the years. They became known as ocean liners because they traveled the same route or line regularly. These lines were like invisible roads across the ocean. For rich passengers, crossing the Atlantic on an ocean liner was like being on a vacation. They enjoyed fine meals and luxurious cabins. For poor immigrants in the tight quarters of third class, the voyage offered the chance to leave their home countries and start new lives in the United States. Millions of immigrants came to America from Europe during the late 1800s and early 1900s on enormous steamships. At the end of the 19th century, 2 British shipping companies, the White Star Line and the Cunard Line, were in fierce competition with each other. In 1907, Cunard completed 2 ocean liners that could cross the Atlantic in only 5 days. How could the White Star Line show up Cunard? They couldn't make a faster ship. That wasn't possible. But could they make a bigger one? Showing some passengers. Chapter 2. Building the Titanic. The White Star Line decided to build 3 new ships. One would be named the Titanic. The names of all White Star Line ships ended in "ick." Hundreds of blueprints and drawings were made. These plans would guide the workers during construction. The shipyard. The Titanic was going to be so big that a single slip, a ramp where ships are constructed, couldn't provide enough space, so 3 slips were turned into 2. Then a giant metal gantry was built over the slip. A gantry is a bridge-like structure that supports equipment, such as cranes. This gantry was the largest in the world, almost 1.5 times the length of a football field and as high as a 19-story building. So here's the plans, and then here it shows the slips where they're going to build the ship. In March 1909, construction began at a huge shipyard in Belfast, Northern Ireland. Ships are built from the bottom up. First came the keel, which serves as the backbone of the ship and lies on its bottom. The keel is made of steel and supports the rest of the ship. After the keel was made, curved steel beams joined the keel to form a U-shaped frame. The upper decks of the ship would eventually be built on top of the beams. The framing of the Titanic took about a year and was completed in April 1910. Building the hull came next. The hull is the lowest part of the ship that sits partly below water. It helps keep the ship afloat. It took about 6 months to finish the hull. First, thousands of large sheets of steel were cut and shaped into plates. Some plates were flat and some were curved. The plates were lined up side by side with their edges overlapping. Then rivets, large iron tacks, were heated and inserted into holes in the steel plates. More than 3 million rivets were used on the Titanic. 3 million. Wow. The hull was divided into 16 separate compartments. Walls called bulkheads separated them. If for any reason the ship started flooding, watertight doors in the bulkheads would instantly shut. The flooded compartments would be blocked off from one another. The Titanic could stay afloat even if the first 4 compartments filled with water. And it was hard to imagine any accident that would cause more flooding than that. Because of this, the newspapers called the Titanic unsinkable. They didn't say almost unsinkable, they said unsinkable. Who built the Titanic? Over 15,000 Irish shipyard workers. It was a grueling job. They worked Monday to Saturday from 6 a.m. to 5:30 p.m. They had a 10-minute break in the morning and a half-hour off for lunch. It was dangerous work. 8 men died during the ship's construction. Here they're showing the ship, and I think that's the construction on the ship. On May 31st, 1911, the hull of the Titanic was ready to be launched into the River Lagan. The black painted hull now had the upper deck and 4 smokestacks, but was empty inside. The launch would show whether the ship could stay afloat. Launching an ocean liner was a big event. It was exciting to see a giant, freshly painted hull pull down a ramp into the water for the first time. Nearly 100,000 people gathered to see Titanic's launch. J. Bruce Ismay, director of the White Star Line, watched from a special grandstand. Wealthy American businessman J.P. Morgan was also there. His company owned the White Star Line. This is showing the first launch to see if it was able to stay afloat. When it was time, 2 bright red rockets exploded. This was to warn ships in the river to stay away from the launch site. It took 62 seconds for the hull to slide off its wooden platforms into the water. That's over a minute. Yes, the Titanic was seaworthy. The workmen waved their hats and the crowd cheered. Because the Titanic had no engine yet, smaller boats towed it up the river for a few minutes. Big anchors and cables prevented the ship from floating away. Then tugboats brought the Titanic back to the shipyard. Now it was time to work on the inside, to turn the shell of the Titanic into a palace on the seas. Okay, so I read the first 2 chapters. I will read 2 more chapters tomorrow, and we'll see what happens. We read enough to know kind of what happens, but maybe we'll get more details in this story. All right, so please remember to get some exercise while you're at home, even if you are doing some stuff inside, maybe some videos, or maybe just try and jog in place or do some jumping jacks or push-ups or anything like that, because you want to stay active. Being active will help you feel better, and we all know how much exercise we need, right? Okay, so I'm going to get to work building some Lego and see how that goes. I will keep you posted. I will send pictures, and I will show you on the video when I get it done. I don't know if I'll get it done by tomorrow, but I'm going to start, okay? Khaleesi says hello, and we hope you guys have a great day. I miss you all. Please email me. Please message me on Google Classroom or anything. I would love to chat with you. So if you think of something to send to me, that'd be great. Okay? Miss you all. Bye, you guys.